Before the Ranger Creed is recited by a formation of Rangers at any ceremony, you will always hear the narrator say this: "Will all Rangers, past and present, please join us as we recite the Ranger Creed." Every Ranger will stand, and as they say those 6 stanzas, they are transformed back to a time when they had the pleasure and the burden of this brotherhood. That feeling is hard to describe. However, it's one that never leaves you. It's a connection that spans the globe and can be reignited when you hear the phrase, "Hey Ranger, what battalion are you from?" Amongst this formation, there are Rangers that stand out. They are legends of this elite organization, and when their names are spoken, people instantly have a story and for a moment relive it. Legends of the 75th podcast wants to capture that feeling and those stories. We want to ensure that these triumphs and sacrifices never fade away. So sit back with your favorite adult beverage and listen to the stories from the Legends of the 75th. Hey, welcome everybody to another episode of Legends of the 75th. If you look around the studio and you look around the video, you'll see Mentors for Military has set up an amazing studio. And now we're going to be doing some kind of conjunction episodes, but they've been kind enough to let us use this for this episode. So a special shout out to Rob, Kyle, Brandon, and Sean, the entire crew for Mentor for Militaries. They're actually amazing individuals, and we're really, really excited to be neighbors with them and joining them in this podcast venture. Absolutely. They've been doing it a little bit longer than we have. We could have a debate about who's more successful or not, but, you know, that's between Rob and I. I'm just kidding. They're blowing us out of the water. But we have an absolute honor to sit down with Sergeant Major retired Mike Kelso. And, Mike, you've been on the list for a long time. I didn't even realize you were so close to me. And so I feel like a total goober for not getting together with you.
Mike, I tell you, man, when you called me, I was absolutely surprised.
Wow.
I had no inclination to do this at all. And I told Brandon and Rob, the only reason I'm doing this is because you're a Ranger buddy. That's the only reason. If it was anybody else, I wouldn't be here.
It is amazing how far that will get you.
Yeah, I bet.
Well, hey, real quick, I just want to, and I'm telling you, when I cover the high points of your career, I'm just going to cover them real quick. So you enlisted in 1973. You immediately went to the 82nd, and then you kind of got frustrated with the peacetime army that we were in. So then in 1977, you joined the Rhodesian Army, 3 Commando. And I am so fucking excited to talk about this. I cannot wait. You did 6 combat parachute jumps, one of the highlights being Operation Dingo Zulu, which was a 30-hour firefight resulting in 1,200 terrorists killed. And we'll talk about that in a minute. You spent 19 total years in Ranger units from RTB and then, 75th. After your time in the Rhodesian Army, you also jumped into Operation Just Cause, which for a lot of people, that was a very big deal. For you, that was just another Tuesday.
Not hardly.
And then you retired in 2005 after almost 2, and now you've spent almost 2 decades as the chief of McKenna Experimental Site. And there's a lot to actually talk about there as well. And you currently sit on the board of advisors for the Rangers Legacy Foundation, which is something we're going to actually start talking about a lot more on Legends. And you're a 2010 Ranger Hall of Fame inductee. So, Mike, I really appreciate you, already kind of saying what you've said. But, was there anything that kind of came to mind as I was reading the intro or I was introducing you?
Well, there was actually. First, I got to say, this is very humbling for me. Truly, because I've seen the guys that you've interviewed over the months, years that you've been doing this.
Yeah.
And to be counted amongst those is truly humbling. And I'm honored to be here.
Well, I would disagree with you because, you were in the Rhodesian Army. Okay. You're an inductee to the Ranger Hall of Fame. And the most important thing is you were featured in Soldier of Fortune magazine. So that alone.
That's true. That was another shock, by the way. That was not expected at all.
If people aren't tracking Soldier of Fortune magazine, because a lot of these kids probably nowadays aren't, you need to go check it out. It pretty much governed our generation of soldiers. Like, that to us was the secret, commandos of the world. If you were in Soldier of Fortune magazine,
not to get ahead of the ball game here, but that's how I ended up in Rhodesia. Was the first issue of Soldier of Fortune magazine.
Well, let's dive right straight into that.
The summer of '75. And then fast forward all these years later. The last printed issue of Soldier of Fortune magazine which was, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago. It's all digital now.
Right.
And Colonel Brown no longer is the publisher of the
Right.
of the magazine. In his last written editorial in the magazine, he mentions me by name, which that absolutely blows my mind. You know, it hard to fathom.
Right.
All that has happened.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it had such a huge influence on your life, and then be influenced later on. I can only imagine.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
I'm just going to say, how did this all start? You know, why did I become a soldier?
Yeah, why did you become a soldier? That's the exact question I was going to ask. So you read my mind.
Well, I think there's several things. It's the era that I grew up in, that I was born into. Born in '56, so Vietnam was just starting. So every night on the news, it's Vietnam, with combat photographers, combat video. So that was a definite influence on my decision to be a soldier. Then TV shows.
Yeah, MASH. I mean,
well, not MASH, because I was real old by then.
Yeah, okay, never mind. Not MASH,
but combat.
Yeah.
With Sergeant Saunders and his squad.
Oh, okay, yeah.
See, you don't even remember combat.
I do remember seeing it, but I don't remember watching it.
Yeah, it's a great show. And I was very impressionable as a young kid, you know. Yeah. So I'd sit there and watch. Then the movies, Darby's Rangers, Merrill's Marauders, all those World War II and Korean War movies that came out during that time frame influenced guys like me, young kids like me. And I suppose most importantly, though I didn't really realize this until later on, is my family's service, dating back to the French and Indian War.
Wow.
So I had a fifth great-grandfather fight then, and then my grandfather in World War I, my dad in Korea. So 6 of 8 uncles served. So I guess it was meant to be that I would be a soldier.
You're descendants of warriors.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I never thought about it. They're just serving their country or their fellow citizen, you know, but sure, I'll go along with that.
Well, I think, too, and we've talked about this, quite a bit in Legends, with your generation, and, a little bit older folks is also, you were raised by the greatest generation as well.
Absolutely.
And the amazing things that they did. Not that they talked about it a lot, but it was always just kind of that music playing in the background.
Yeah, I agree.
They not only defeated, the Nazis and Japan, but then most importantly, what they came back and they did with the United States, and so it was always just kind of there that the reason they were able to do the things they did was because they served their country, and we were, you were influenced by that.
I absolutely was. My dad never really talked about the war.
Right.
He'd tell a couple little funny things, but serious stuff. I asked him one time, because he enlisted in the Army in 1949, the day after high school.
Okay.
I said, well, Dad, what? Why right after high school? And he come from a very hard scrabble farm,
right?
In the Ozarks.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah, so it was hard living, as it was for a lot of Americans. I asked him, "Why'd you join? Why'd you enlist so soon?" He goes, "Mike, I got tired of milking those damn cows." And this is before machines, This is all hand-to-hand stuff, So I come from a line of folks that served their country in peace and in wartime. Yeah. And so I felt that was probably a major influence on my life. Yeah. Was having done that.
We've joked about that a few times, that guys, from, the harder generations that grew up on farms, Ozarks or the backwoods of Georgia and everything else, that when they joined the military, they got a cot, 3 hots.
Absolutely.
And they were sleeping through the night. They didn't have to get up and deal with a lot of things, in basic training. That was good living.
Oh, it was very good living. I mean, he come from a family of 12 kids living in a 3-room farmhouse. Wow. Think about that.
Yeah, so the open bay.
Open bay was magic to those guys.
That's amazing.
That's right. Go ahead.
No.
I'm just going to say, when I enlisted in the Army, it was a little bit unusual the way it came about. And I probably disappointed my folks on 2 occasions.
Right.
And this is one of them.
Okay.
I'm a first week as a senior in high school, first week. And I'm reading a book on the Foreign Legion called The Damn Die Hard.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a great book. Great book. And I'm on the chapter talking about the Foreign Legion paratroopers in Indochina. Mm-hmm. And I thought, So that night at supper, we're sitting there, and I collect military memorabilia as my hobby.
Yeah.
And so I had some back even as a high school kid. So I asked my dad, "Dad, do you mind if I sell my collection?" And he goes, "No, Mike, it's yours."
Yeah, do what you want.
But what do you want to sell it for? I go, "I want to buy a plane ticket." He goes, "You want to buy a plane ticket? Where are you going?" I go, "I'm going to Marseille, France." And he goes, "Why are you going to Marseille, France?" I go, "I'm going to join the Foreign Legion." Oh my God. Mom starts crying, you know. My dad looks at me like, "You asshole." You know? So he sends me away from the table, you know. He comes down a few minutes later and goes, "Look, if you forget this nonsense about the Foreign Legion, your mother and I will sign for you to
join the Army."
So that was decision number one that my folks never got over, I don't think. Well, they got over it, but that was not a happy time.
Was that your plan going into it? Did you think it would go that way or no?
No.
You were going to go to the French Foreign Legion?
That was my plan, yeah. Dad gave me the option. So that was in September of 73.
Yeah.
And as a little sidebar, I remember, you remember a couple of years ago we were having trouble recruiting?
Yeah.
And so one of the proposals was, well, we'll take non-high school graduates. And it was like, "Oh, we can't do that. Those guys aren't worth a damn," and da-da-da.
Yeah.
A lot of my generation enlisted in the Army without high school graduation.
They 100% did.
And the funny thing is, and I don't remember exactly, but 4 or 5 weeks into basic training, I had my GED. Because that was part of the POI.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah. You know, and I don't remember now, but a few weeks, a couple days a week for a couple hours,
You would go and
Okay. And so we all had our GEDs.
Oh, wow.
Within halfway through basic training.
I had no idea.
Yeah. So that's not an unheard of thing, accepting non-high school graduates.
Man, I wonder if they were doing that when I enlisted, because I definitely would have did that.
And when was that?
98.
98.
Yeah, a little bit after you.
I don't think they were.
Yeah, because I would have definitely dropped out of high school. High school, I was
there you go.
God, what a grind. I was like,
well, I was a good student, but
I wasn't.
But the problem was I had all the credits I needed to graduate.
You see, I was in a similar boat
so to
too.
my mind, I'm wasting 9 months here.
Yep, same.
When everyone knows I'm going to go in the military.
Yeah.
So
I was doing work release. Like my last semester of high school, I was doing like work release.
Right.
Like I didn't even have to go to school, you know?
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was awesome.
So that's how I ended up. So I go to the recruiter, and I'll give it to the recruiters. They tried like heck to talk me out of enlisting.
Really?
Without being a graduate.
Oh, okay.
They said, "Well, why don't you do the delayed entry program?" I said, "No, I'm ready to go now. Now's the time I'm ready to go." The reason I went to them is because on the outside of the recruiting window was a poster. You've probably seen it. A lot of guys, I think it's even made a comeback. You know, U.S. paratrooper.
Oh, yeah.
Last step towards becoming a man.
Yes,
and this guy coming out of a 141.
Yeah.
You know.
They're trying to do a lot of that, like vintage stuff, like make it modern and everything else.
I think they should.
Yeah, I think they should redo. I've said this to a couple guys that I know that work like Army and Ranger Regiment, like PAO offices and stuff. You remember the video that, you know, that it's got the gentleman, they jump, you know, they got jump, and then they're sitting on the rucksacks, and you know, he's drinking the cup of coffee, and he's like, you know, before 5 a.m., you know, blah, blah, blah.
We do more,
Yeah. They need to redo that one.
Right.
Absolutely redo that. And maybe it's an energy drink instead of a cup of coffee. But
that's probably more appropriate for this day and age.
Yeah, it is, absolutely.
Yeah, I think they should bring all that stuff back.
Yeah, or maybe like kombucha or something.
Because, you know, guys join the Army for the adventure.
They absolutely do.
Most of them.
Yeah.
Not all.
Yeah.
But the vast majority join because they want an adventurous early life.
Yeah, 100%.
And so they don't care about becoming a nurse in the Army.
No, they don't.
They don't. Young men, especially, and that maybe even today, young ladies.
Yeah, I think it's both. I think it's making a shift.
Yeah, absolutely. So Yeah, so that's how I got into the Army. Went to the 82nd.
Yeah, and you were very quickly kind of disappointed because it wasn't all the adventure you thought it would be.
Well,
I mean, I'm sure you had fun.
Well,
but
sure. Well, I was a paratrooper, so why can't you have fun?
Yeah, fair enough.
And I was in a great unit. We did a lot of deployments, stateside type stuff, a lot of training, but it just wasn't. I had joined because of Vietnam, and Vietnam was over with.
Right.
Now, all my NCOs, of course, were
Vietnam vets.
Yeah, and which was great. But for me personally, it wasn't exactly what I was expecting. And then the summer of '75 happened, and the first issue of Soldier of Fortune magazine came out.
Right.
Wow, who had ever heard of such a thing?
I got to ask you a question. Where did you pick that magazine up at?
So
I don't know why I want to know this.
no, it was in an Army surplus store
Okay.
in downtown Fayetteville.
Okay.
And they had some like on a counter as I was checking out. There were some. I said, "Oh, that's cool."
So you grabbed the magazine.
So I grabbed the magazine, and there were 2 articles in there. One on the Rhodesian security situation, and one on the Rhodesia itself.
Yeah.
And in there, they had the recruiting addresses for the police and the Army.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
okay, so I wrote off to I got a copy of my 2-1 and all that stuff, mailed it off to the recruiting officer, Major Lamprecht. I'll never forget his name. And I would say a couple months later, we had just come in from doing an obstacle course. And back in those days, the platoons had to send a runner up to get their mail from the first sergeant.
Right. Yeah.
The one that, everybody had to have a box or whatever, So so I go up to get the mail, and there's a small packet from Rhodesia. Wow. And inside it was the recruiting propaganda.
Oh,
the same stuff we used to join the Army, see the world,
right?
Pay rates, a little brochure with elephants and lions, and all this.
What?
Oh yeah,
that is so cool.
It was cool, yeah. There's a guy patrolling and there's an elephant in the background.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, that sort of shit.
Oh, I'd have been there too.
Wow, this is awesome. So,
what did your mates think of this? Like, what were they saying?
well, there were actually a couple that wanted to go also.
Oh, okay.
And so when I ETS'd from the Army in September of '76, I went home, living with my folks. I went to a semester of school. And in the meantime, the 2 buddies that were going to go with me re-enlisted.
Oh, okay.
So I kind of pissed them off when I actually went.
Oh, okay. They didn't think you were going to.
Yeah, exactly. And so I'm sitting there prepping for finals or whatever. And back then, in those days, when you got a subscription from Soldier of Fortune, they sent you 2 posters. One I'm sure you've seen, Be a Man Among Men.
Yeah.
Everybody's seen that one.
Yeah.
And the other one was a picture of a dead villager killed by the terrorists. And so I saw the one, Be a Man Among Men poster, and I said, let's do it.
Yeah.
So I went to the police station, got my record, not that I had one,
right,
and all that stuff, and mailed it off. Then the second decision that I'm sure disappointed my folks was about a month later, my dad walks in, throws a letter on the table, and goes, "I think you've been wanting this." It was my contract
for the Rhodesian Army.
The Rhodesian Army. Yeah,
wow.
To report. Yeah.
Wow.
So,
that is unbelievable.
Yeah. So, in that downside of that, I had to pay my way.
Yeah.
So I had to sell all my scuba kit. I was trying to raise money, My grandma gave me some money, all that
amazing.
sort of stuff. Yeah. And well, once I finished commando course, they reimbursed me.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
It was $802. I'll never forget that number. It was $802.
I want to dive into this. We're gonna pause for a second, but before we do, I just mail. Like, email, it's just not the same. It's just not the same.
It's not the same, yeah.
Or so, like
That's
getting
right.
something, in the mail, like, and waiting for that and anticipation, like
Right.
it was so much different back then. It was really neat to hold things in your hand. I'm old school like that. Like I still can't like read books on like Kindles and stuff. I got to hold the paper,
absolutely.
in my hand.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I just want to pause real quick, Mike. I can't wait to dive into this.
Okay. Sounds
This is
good.
going to be so exciting. So everybody that's listening, this finishes up the 20-minute preview. I'm telling you, you don't want to miss the rest of this episode because we are going to dive in and do some amazing things that Mike Kelso has done throughout his career. So if you haven't signed on to our Patreon to get exclusive access to all of our episodes, the rest of this episode, but almost 70 episodes that we've done with some of the Ranger greats across the regiment, you definitely want to. So I'll include the link in the show notes.